remarks, I'd say that this is our Zoom hearing. We've had 3 previous public hearings, one last week in Norwich, one earlier this week in Shelton. We had one last week during the evening in Hartford, and this is our Zoom hearing to ensure that folks have the opportunity to address the committee and share with us their perspective on what considerations we should be, what things we should be considering as we're drawing new district lines, and any particular interest that they might have in how those lines are drawn. This is sort of the penultimate activity of the committee. As folks know, according to the Constitution, the committee, which was impaneled last February, has until tomorrow to present a plan to the General Assembly for its consideration. This committee will not meet that goal as a result of the fact that the Census Bureau provided us with information much later than is typical. And so rather than in April, we received data in August. It was after we received that data in August that we decided to schedule these public hearings so that we would benefit, the public would really benefit from being able to see the data prior to submitting their public testimony. I just add a couple of other things. One is that despite the fact that this is our last hearing, the commission, which will be impaneled, I would expect to be very quickly after September 15th. I know we'll continue to accept submissions of plans or written testimony via the Reapportionment Committee's website and email address. And so I would encourage folks who continue to have other items that they want to bring to our attention to submit those items through the Reapportionment website. The Reapportionment email address is reapportionment.cga.ct.gov, right? So it's reapportionment.cga.ct.gov. I see some members of the public have been let into the room, and in the interest of time, since we have a number of people signed up, I'm going to begin to take folks in order. I would first pause for a moment, though, and ask Senator Kelly or if other members of the committee have anything else that they would like to add. And I don't see any hands raised, and so we'll start with public testimony. I do not see the first couple of people who were on the list, but I do see Peter Ramp. I'm giving a good shot, and I guess I'll call on Mr. Ramp to offer his testimony.
Good evening, members of the Reapportionment Committee. My name is Peter Ramp, and I would first like to congratulate you on addressing the reapportionment of the 143rd Connecticut House District and for giving me a chance to testify. I have been a resident for 42 years in Wilton, and I plan to be one for the coming years. During my first 20 to 30 years, Wilton voters accounted for slightly more than 3/4 of the district, 60% in Wilton, 40% in Norwalk. Voting by the representative that reflected our interest of both towns was challenging but manageable. Unfortunately, today this is no longer so. It has become much more of a challenge after the redistricting back in 2012. The majority of Wilton remained in the district, while portions of Norwalk grew and a small part of Westport was added. However, both were and are different. And when I say both, I'm really referring to Norwalk and Wilton. Norwalk is a city with significant representation in Hartford. Wilton, on the other hand, is a small rural town without a direct voice in Norwalk, in Hartford right now. Now, to go on, our current representative does try to represent both the interests of Norwalk and what I call the small town interest of Wilton. But be frank, it must be stressful for our representative to advocate for two distinctly different interests in both Wilton and Norwalk at the same time. I think they are torn between and betwixt in some of the decisions and votings that they have to make. This really shouldn't be. One can't serve two masters simultaneously. We all know that. Wilton and Norwalk face substantially different issues. They face different concerns, and they have different desires by their citizens. Both should have their own representative. A representative that is dedicated to representing the interests of their respective constituents in Hartford, advocating for their residents, advocating for their distinctly different needs. Since Wilton's voice has
3 minutes, sir. 3 minutes.
Okay, since Wilton's voice has lost its voice in the noise, I respectfully ask you to reapportion to 143rd District to have both the best representation for both Norwalk and Wilton by separating them and placing Wilton into a distinct district with another small town that has similar issues and interests. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for your service to Connecticut and for this great effort of a bipartisan committee. I hope and trust that you will give Wilton its due. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramp. Thank you for offering your testimony. I would like to commend you for not only delivering your testimony today, but also submitting it in writing. And so it has been placed along with other written submissions on the committee's website, and people can read that, and it's part of the public record. It's helpful to us to have you do that. I'd ask if there's anybody on the committee who has any questions for Mr. Ramp. And if not, then we will thank you and we'll move on to our next speaker. And that is Tony Boucher, someone I think that's a little bit familiar to us. Senator Boucher, welcome back. And we welcome your testimony tonight.
Oh, thank you so very much, Representative Haddad and Tom Spinelli, Senator Kelly, and so many other friends, Senator Formica. I miss you all very much and treasure our time together. You should be so commended, and we're so grateful for you taking this very enormous task of this important redistricting. For those of you that don't know me on the committee, my name is Tony Boucher. I also wrote to add my comments to this committee. For those that do not know, I was previously state representative for the 143rd District that we're talking about from January 1997 to 2009. Before representing the towns of Wilton, Westport, Weston, Reading, Bethel, Richfield, and New Canaan in the state Senate from 2009 to 2019. But during my 12 years in the House, I also represented the towns of New Canaan and the city of Norwalk, in addition to the town of Wilton. I'm sorry. I have a very friendly cat and dog. So for that time, since I represented Wilton, the city of Norwalk, and also the town of New Canaan, I became very familiar with and learned of the market differences and divergent and often contradictory interests within these various communities over this 22-year period. It only seems like yesterday. The current configuration of the 143rd, though, however, does not seem to represent these communities well. And also, please consider that the population of Wilton grew 2% to 18,062 to 18,503. And the House district has 151 members, and each member district represents about 22,600 residents. Wilton is the largest municipality without a representative in the House or in the state Senate, I might add. And most importantly, Wilton is the largest municipality split into multiple districts, none of which have 50% or more of the district. I think that's the key point here. The Connecticut Constitution, in fact, says that for the purposes of forming an assembly district, no town shall be divided except for the purpose of forming assembly districts wholly within the town. And that's really important. It's in Article 3 and Section 4 of the Constitution, where it specifically states, you know, how many should be representing us in the House General Assembly, but that each assembly district should be contiguous as to territory and should elect no more than one representative. For the purpose of forming an assembly district, no town shall be divided except for the purpose of forming assembly districts wholly within that community. I think that's really a key point we should be considering while you're going through this process. It's my hope that you'll agree that Wilton should not be split up to the degree that it is to make another district complete, thereby reducing their size so substantially it's no longer wholly in that town. It should have its own state representative. And I thank you so much for your time and your consideration on this matter. And as I said, it's just wonderful to see all of you. I give you my very best regards and best wishes as you go through this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I'll ask committee members if they have anything that they want to ask Boucher, and seeing Senator Kelly.
Yes, I don't have a question. I just have a remark. Thank you very much, Senator Boucher, for your insightful comments. It's very good to see you, and thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. And Senator Formica, did you have something you wanted to add as well?
You know, I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I certainly didn't see Senator Kelly jump to raise his hand, but I too wanted to extend my best wishes and love to my good friend, Senator Boucher, and hope that all is well with her. And Wilton has been a topic of previous conversations at the public hearings. And so I'm sure that, you know, the committee is going to take a look. But thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good to see you, Tony.
Thank you so much. The feeling is likewise. Thank you all so very much. You've been wonderful. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And if there's no other comments, then we'll thank you. And you looks like you got an early draw, and so you're off for the rest of the night unless you want to watch the rest of our hearing. And I'll call on the next person who I see in the room. I'm going to pause for just a second, though, and ask committee staff if you want to provide any instruction for people who are on the sign-up list for how they manage to get into this room, into the webinar, in order to deliver testimony. I'm asking that question because we've skipped over a couple of people already, and I think that there's probably at least one person, according to the text I'm getting, who might be signed in to maybe watch the YouTube hearing virtually, but isn't here in this room yet, and so I can't call on him. And so maybe a little bit of instruction here might solve some folks' issues.
Sure. So my name's Tom. I staff, one of the staff people on the committee. If you signed up via Zoom, like it would have sent you a Zoom link that you officially signed up, you use that link to log on right now. Because if you're here, we're going to call on you and you get put in an attendee list. And then we are letting those people in 5 at a time according to where they are on the sign up sheet. So, sorry, my son. If once you've signed up, You get a link, you log on to that link right now, and then we let you in the room 5 at a time according to the sign-up sheet. So that is it. I don't know if that clears stuff up. And then afterwards, after you've given your testimony, you can just leave the room because we're live streaming from YouTube and CTN, so it's exactly the same.
Yeah, that was my second question was what people, when you're completed with your testimony,
Your,
you're,
and then we are letting those people in 5 at a time. For example, Mr. Ramp, if you
Yes.
if you were to log off, you will see the exact same thing on CTN that you're seeing here. So
Tom, I had my hand raised because it's not filming, it's not coming over on CTN. So I don't know if that's anything we need to do or
it should
not,
not be. I
but
think
it's not.
CTN is in here, so they could probably answer that better than me. I don't know if CTN.
I left for a minute to look on my TV just to make sure because people were saying it wasn't coming through and I couldn't get it on my other computer. And I went and checked on the TV and it was blank there too. So just so you know, I just don't know if there's anything we should be doing differently.
Thank you very much for that information, Senator Abrams. I guess what I would suggest is that as I'll call the next couple of folks who are here to testify, and if one of the staff could reach out to CTN and get confirmation that that they're working on their end to make this sort of work for everybody, that would probably be helpful. Okay. And with that, the next person who I see in the room and who's on our list is Patricia Tomasetti. Ms. Tomasetti, you're welcome. Welcome to the committee, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. I'll try to be fast because you have it already in writing. So members of the Reapportionment Committee, my name is Patty Tomasetti, and I've lived in Wilton for 25 years. I was born and raised in Norwalk. I lived there just 6 months shy of 33 years. So to say I understand both the town of Wilton and the city of Norwalk would be pretty much an accurate statement. While growing up in Norwalk, it was great. I loved it. And much of my family still lives there, and some of my friends still live there. Wilton really is my home. My husband grew up in Wilton, and when we decided to buy a house and figure out where we wanted to live, he wanted to live in Wilton. And I was like, okay, let's give that a try. I'm, always lived in a city. So I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel about living in a small community. But after we moved here, I quickly realized the differences in the town. Norwalk has so much to offer its citizens. It's got the shoreline, the beaches, the abundance of school options, a quicker pace of life, shopping, and of course, the direct train to New York City. It has so many more things to offer, but it's a city and you don't get to know all your neighbors. It's not easy to find volunteer organizations if you want to work with them. When you have children, they allow you to connect quickly and create small communities, but there's so many schools and you don't really have the opportunity to meet everyone, to really be a part of that small community. It has a mayor, and as a citizen, you're living in a city. You don't get to say how the taxes are spent. You don't get to vote on renovations of your schools or have a say on what the town decides to bond for improvements. And I quickly realized those things were really important to me once I lived in Wilton. I really liked living in this small community. It offered a lot of other things that I was looking for. We've got lots of open space. We have farms for families to spend time at and learn from. We have an amazing school system, but much smaller. We have, when you have children, they can easily meet all the children in their age group once they start school. And as families, you get to connect and really get that sense of that small community. Clearly, it's a slower pace of life. We have small shops, mostly owned by local residents. Even going to the local grocery store, the village market, that's like a community event. You can't get out of there in 5 minutes. You know everyone. And I just found it was really quick and easy for me personally to find volunteer organizations and really connect with so many people that lived here in so many different generations of Wiltonians. the fact that we have a first select woman, we get to vote on pretty much everything. I have a say in how my town spends its money, allocates its money. That became really important to me. And I know you're like, okay, what does this have to do with changing things? But it's simple, really, because these are the reasons that Wilton and Norwalk should not have the same person representing themselves, representing them in Hartford. Both communities are wonderful and offer so much, but they're so different. And how could one person represent both really well? How could they understand and get to know all their citizens and the needs of that town or city? And how could they actively be split during the day, in their time, doing their job the way it needs to be done for each community? And they can't, they just can't. Norwalk's a city, it has different needs. Wilton is a small town. Wilton needs a rep that can give our town the time and attention it deserves in Hartford. I appreciate that you guys are doing this. I know it takes a lot. Trust me, my family's been very embedded in Norwalk and we are very embedded in Wilton. We definitely need somebody different to represent each town, so each town gets what they need. Well, that's it. I just want to thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. And I see your written testimony is online as well. We appreciate that. If the committee has any questions for Ms. Tomasetti, then they're welcome now, but seeing none, we will go back to the list. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I see that number 2 on our list, Philip Murphy, has entered the room. And so I'll call on you next to deliver your testimony, Mr. Murphy. The floor is yours.
There, I was muted there for a moment. Thank you so much for having this hearing and for adding me. I'll make this very brief. So the purpose of Connecticut's form of representative government is to ensure that all citizens have a voice in Hartford. But our district, the 143rd House District, which is made up of nearly equal parts of Wilton and Norwalk, makes it very difficult for our representative to hear both of us and cast a single vote that addresses all of our distinct issues. Wilton is a small community compared to our more populous neighbor, Norwalk. We're a comparatively rural community compared to the more urban Norwalk. And we're a well-established bedroom suburb compared to the young and thriving Norwalk. We're neighbors, but we have different interests and concerns and challenges. We love Norwalk, but we're not Norwalk. Yet as far as the General Assembly is concerned, Wilton appears to be just another Norwalk neighborhood. It would make far more sense for Wilton to share a district with a neighboring town that has similar challenges, such as Ridgefield or Weston. And that would allow not only Wilton to be heard in Hartford, but it would also let Norwalk's clear voice be heard without any distortion from Wilton. So when you're making your redistricting decisions, I would ask that you consider pooling Wilton with a similar community so that the intent of our representative government is realized more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it. I'll ask if there are any questions from members of the committee, but seeing none, well, thank you for your testimony and enjoy the rest of your evening. We appreciate your perspective.
Thank you very much.
The next person on the list is Kevin Regan. I will say that on the list, you're identified as a data scientist. So
I didn't realize.
We'll see how that works.
First, I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to testify. My name is Kevin Regan. I'm a resident of Wilton. My wife and I moved here with our 3 kids recently within the past couple of years. Most of what I'm going to say has actually already been said, but I'll rattle them off pretty quickly and hopefully give you guys a few minutes back. One, the inherent agency problem between the town of Wilton and the town of City. The town, Wilton the town and Norwalk the city, they're quite different. Article 3, Section 4, which has already been stated by Tony Boucher. And then, arguably, I tend to believe that, Wilton needs its own representation. And then if redistricting needed to occur, I would hope that we would consider other smaller towns that are more rural and similar to, say, like Wilton being similar to Ridgefield or Reading. So those are kind of the salient points that I wanted to make. But again, much of what I wanted to say has already been said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. I think the committee is hearing Wilton loud and clear. But we appreciate that members of the community have taken the time to address our committee. Are there any other questions by members of the committee? Seeing none, then we'll go back to the list. Thank you very much, Mr. Regan.
Have a great day.
The next person on the sign up, I'll tell folks that what I'm doing is I'm looking at the folks who have been permitted into the room by the clerks, picking the lowest person on the list next. And the next person would be Helen McSweeney. Helen McSweeney. You have to turn on your camera and unmute.
Okay, I just unmuted and also I turned the camera on.
There you
That's
are.
better.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. It seems that I will repeat mostly of what's been said. Tony said it best. However, for my personal case, I am a full-time resident of Wilton and have been here for 34 years. 2 of my stepchildren have been educated in the Wilton school system, and I've worked at Wilton Center Travel Limited for 23 years and understand and appreciate the needs, accomplishments, and aspirations of our small community. Wilton started as a northern parish of Norwalk and was artificially linked to Norwalk more than 2 centuries ago. Things have changed considerably over the past 2 centuries. Wilton is the only town of its size in Connecticut without its own dedicated representative. We need our own resident representative to attend to our own unique circumstances. Wilton is a small town and Norwalk is a large city. Our needs diverge considerably. Grouped together with any one of our small adjacent towns of Ridgefield, Reading, or Weston would make much more sense. Given the present 143rd district, no representative can adequately represent both Norwalk and Wilton fairly at the same time. And this has been said a couple of times before. Connecticut Constitution, Article 3, Section 4 states, for the purpose of forming assembly districts, no town shall be divided except for the purpose of forming assembly districts wholly within the town. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mrs. McSweeney. We appreciate your testimony. If there's no questions from members of the committee, then we'll thank you very much for your testimony, and I will call on the next person, who will be Tim DiCarlo.
Good evening. My name is Timothy DiCarlo. I'm the Registrar of Voters for the City of Waterbury, and I'm here this evening to represent the Registrar of Voters Association of Connecticut. I'd like to thank the committee for this opportunity to testify here this evening. ROVAC President Chris Prue had hoped to be here this evening, but due to a scheduling conflict, was unable to do so. I'd also like just to quickly mention to the committee that my first task as a brand new registrar was implementing the redistricting of the City of Waterbury back in 2011, so I'm a little familiar with this. On behalf of the Registrar of Voters Association, I'd like to thank the committee for its valuable service to the 2021 redistricting project. As the bipartisan administrators of Connecticut's elections, the Registrar of Voters fully appreciate the importance of this project, as well as the large undertaking that awaits this committee. Once the reapportionment committee finalizes its work and drawing new districts, our work begins, from confirming the exact locations of the district boundaries to determining if new polling locations are needed, qualifying the locations and making sure that they're ADA compliant, and notifying each registered voter in writing to inform them of any changes to their polling location. In the past, reapportionment committees concluded their work by providing registrars with a shapefile, a data storage format of geometric data that we must use to interpret the committee's district's boundaries. The majority of our members then utilize municipal geographic information systems, or GIS tools, to analyze these shapefiles with the precision that we need to be with the precision that we need to verify each district. However, not all towns and registrars have access to GIS tools, leaving us to rely on other municipal departments, such as planning and zoning or public works departments, to fulfill these duties or to interpret the changes without GIS. Neither situation is ideal when it comes to such an important matter like our democracy process. Currently, cities such as Middletown, Glastonbury, Torrington, and Waterbury have not only one municipal general assembly district, but also state senate and congressional districts. Waterbury currently has 5 general assembly, 2 state senate, and is divided between both the 3rd and 5th congressional districts. Inputting the data into the Connecticut centralized voting system, which is the CVRS system, is a long manual process in which each street must be entered one at a time, with any cuts in roads to be entered into the system multiple times in order to reflect the accurate districts which have been assigned. With all that needs to be done to ensure safe, transparent, accessible, and fair elections, time and accuracy is extremely important. We would like to recommend a simple solution, that the 2021 redistricting plan include precise details of addresses and/or locations where the district lines should end and begin. Adding this information to your report will reduce the chances of unintentional human error and make redistricting process a far more efficient and transparent for the Secretary of State, registrars,
3 minutes.
Canada, and everyone else involved. I thank the committee for their time this evening. Rovac is available should the committee have any further questions, both now or in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. DiCarlo. We appreciate your testimony. You said you were the registrar of voters from Waterbury?
Yes, sir.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't mishear that. You didn't mispronounce Wilton. Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it, and the expertise that you bring to our considerations.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, then I will tell members of the public, especially those who are waiting as an attendee, is that the staff is facing some level of technical difficulties behind the scenes and getting folks into this room. And so if you're patient, I'm confident that we will be able to get through everybody who wants to testify, even if it's not precisely in the same order as what we're seeing on the list, but we're doing the best we can, and we appreciate that each of you have decided to be here and to offer your testimony. Thank you, Mr. DiCarlo. And next, I will call on Prasad Eiler.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome, thank you. So yeah, my name is Prasad Iyer, and I'm a resident of Wilton. I've been living in Wilton in 2005, and I've worked here briefly as well before that. I do appreciate the opportunity to testify regarding the 143rd House District. So one of the things I learned is that the town of Wilton is the largest municipality within Connecticut, but doesn't have a senator or representative in Hartford. We're talking close to a population of 19,000 people. And instead, we have a shared representation with the city of Norwalk. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there between a town and a city, put together. So the key issue is that these two communities are very different in terms of their profile. And I've attached in my testimony the advanced city information on these two towns. And in order for them to grow and prosper, they have very different needs. And because of this, it's so important that these two communities have separate and focused representation in Hartford, so that the issues specific to these communities are addressed appropriately and adequately, rather than being forced to accept a split the difference kind of a situation. And really, you can't split the difference because the difference is way too much. The problem really gets compounded as neither of the communities is able to make progress in the current scenario, as really they're not appropriately represented, let me put it that way. And it also inhibits the ability of Hartford to drive the benefit from the diversity of thinking and action that would come if they were treated as separate entities. So in light of this, I would strongly recommend and encourage to this committee to redistrict Wilton and Norwalk appropriately in such a way that these communities have focused on local representation to bring about the change and diversity to Hartford, which will enable these communities to grow and prosper, which I'm sure is very critical for the growth of Connecticut. That's just my testimony. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony and your community's activism on this issue. So we appreciate that you took the time to address us today. And I'll ask if any other members of the committee have any questions, but seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. And next, I will call on Jenny Wong.
Hello, my name is Jenny Wong. I would like to speak to present my testimony. I've actually submitted my testimony in writing. And so tonight I would like to just emphasize the main point here. I've been a resident of Wilton together with my family since 2013. The reason my husband and I chose Wilton is because we want our children to grow up in a small town setting where they can get to know the community and enjoy the nature and have access to the technical community as well as the school and the excellent education here. Now, shortly after we moved, several years after, we realized that from our former state representative that my district 143rd, is neighboring with Norwalk, and neither district represent over 47%. And knowing Norwalk, they have over 89,000 in population, so they're large urban setting. They have very large divergent interest from that of the resident of Wilton. And because of that, I've recognized the difficulty that my former state representative faced in representing us in Hartford. So I'm here tonight because I would like to persuade all of you members of the committee to consider redistricting Wilton and Norwalk separately so that the state representative, our state representative can represent their constituent fairly and appropriately, whether we are from Wilton or whether we're from Norwalk. That's what I'm trying to say tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to provide my testimony, and I am grateful for your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wan. We appreciate your testimony. Seeing no additional questions from members of the committee, well, thank you for your testimony, and we will move on. See a bunch of new people in the room, and I gotta just figure out who's next. Hold on just a second. Well, I know he's been waiting for a while, so I'll ask Brian Dinkelacre. Mr. Dinkelacre, it's your turn.
Hey, how's everybody doing? That was a very, very good attempt at my name. A lot of people have done a lot worse, so congratulations. I'd like to say good evening, members of the committee. My name is Brian Dinkelacre. I've lived with my wife and two young sons in Wilton since 2015. Prior to moving to Wilton, we lived in Norwalk for about 8 years after relocating to New York State. Recently, I'm new to this. I became interested and involved in the town of Wilton's governance. And frankly, I was somewhat shocked when I discovered that the town, like Wilton, that's the size it is now, does not have a single dedicated representative. And I asked myself, how is it that such a sizable and notable town doesn't have its own representative? I then further discovered that it's shared equally with Norwalk, with, I guess, a small piece of Westport's thrown in there. And now, the glaring question I had living in Norwalk, not as much history as Patty Tomasetti, but how is it that a city like Norwalk, which is so clearly different from the semi-rural suburban Wilton in so many key ways, shares its representation with Wilton? Two towns whose needs and interests are so very different. This, in my opinion, is unintelligent and unfair to both Norwalk and Wilton residents. As a former resident of Norwalk and the husband of a Norwalk ESL teacher of 12 plus years, I can tell you that the two towns, in particular the schools, couldn't have more differentiated needs. From my wife's experience as an elementary school ESL teacher in Norwalk, and as the mother of children in Wilton elementary schools, she sees there are two very different areas, two very different needs and interests. And the keys to both their improved successes clearly lie down different paths with regards to resources needed for safety, special education, ESL students, curriculum, sports teams, etc. And that's just talking about the school district. All things that would be easier for each town to obtain, if their house district and their voting representation was 100% focused separately on solving the individual and specific challenges that each town faces. Having two municipalities with such divergent needs is not only unintelligent, I think it's irresponsible, and it's an utter disservice.
3 minutes, sir. 3 minutes.
I therefore ask respectfully that you separate Wilton and Norwalk and place Wilton in the district with another small town that has similar issues and interests. And I thank you all for your service on this committee, and I hope that you make the right decision for both of these great municipalities. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate your patience waiting in the room as well. I was waiting for your spot on the list, but we appreciate your patience and your testimony. Seeing no questions from members of the committee, well, thank you for your testimony. And I will call on Meng Dao Du.
Hi, members of the Reapportionment Committee and Representative Haddad. My name is Meng Dao Du. I go by the nickname Monty. I've been living in Wilton since 2014. I support redistricting in State Representative District 143 so that the people in the town of Wilton will be able to elect a state representative who can adequately represent the town's needs and interests. Norwalk is one of the largest cities in Connecticut with over 80,000 residents, while Wilton is a typical town with under 20,000 residents. So before I moved to Wilton, I had lived in Norwalk for 9 years. While I like both places in somewhat different ways, I experienced firsthand how the priorities are different. For example, needs for schools are totally different. Norwalk has 19 public schools, while Wilton has 4. Zoning policies in the city are significantly different from those in a small town for good reasons. The amount of open spaces and natural reserves are also very different between the city and the small town, requiring implementation of different policies. Housing needs, housing conditions are also different. So as a result, no single representative can vote regularly for the best interest of both. So a city like Norwalk has vast numbers of events and issues, which requires the attention of its state representatives. Wilton is therefore kind of deprived of having a representative whose foremost priority is Wilton and who has the available time to devote to its interests. In my opinion, both Wilton and Norwalk will be better served by grouping Wilton probably together in the same district with another small towns such as Richfield or Reading or Weston. No, that's what I think. Thank you very much, Representative Haddad and committee members.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony. Seeing no additional questions from members of the committee, I am going to move back to the list. And next I will call on Nadia Shadlow.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for offering this opportunity to communicate our views. My name is Nadia Shadlow. I've lived in Wilton for just over 25 years, hard to believe. I'll keep my remarks short, and they will echo many of the previous remarks. The foundation of our democracy is local representation, and as a part of this, being able to respond to the needs of a local community with similar needs and challenges. The foundation of democracy is also ensuring that citizens feel heard. Wilton and Norwalk have different concerns and priorities. As previously noted, Norwalk is a city. It has over a dozen schools. It has beaches, which are lovely, but also drive certain requirements, environmental and otherwise. Wilton has 4 schools, no beaches. It's more rural than Norwalk. Norwalk would be better served by a representative dedicated to addressing the needs of its residents. And as others have pointed out, one representative cannot fairly represent 2 constituencies with different needs, especially when one representative represents approximately an equal percentage of the district's population. So as has been pointed out, this leads to deadlock decisions and the inability to solve local problems in a timely way. And timely outcomes really matter. They matter because they give people confidence that their local representatives and their overall local government are hearing them and working to respond to their needs and challenges and seeking opportunities to make progress as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate your patience with us today and offering your testimony. I don't see any questions from members of the committee. And so we'll thank you for your testimony and go back to the list. And the next person on the list is Ryan Scala.
Hi, everyone. Dear Senator Kelly, Representative Haddad, and members of the Reapportionment Committee, my name is Ryan Scala. I'm a resident of Avon, and I am a public policy graduate student at UConn. I'm also a member of the Princeton University Gerrymandering Project, which works with state partners and performs nonpartisan analysis to try and eliminate gerrymandering nationwide. I'm testifying as a resident of Avon, not on behalf of Princeton, regarding the decennial redrawing of Connecticut's congressional and state legislature districts. One of the important metrics many states and organizations use to gauge if a map is gerrymandered or not is if communities of interest, or COIs, are split. COIs are groups that could be similar racially, economically, geographically, etc. And many other fair map, quote unquote, fair map advocates and I believe that because of these similarities, these communities should have the opportunity to vote as a block for someone that represents them. The current congressional and state legislature maps of Connecticut do not preserve certain COIs. So for instance, the congressional map splits the Naugatuck Valley, Farmington Valley, Litchfield Hills, and this dilutes the influence voters in these regions should have. In addition, the current state Senate map splits the Litchfield Hills as well into 3 districts when the region can be put into 1 Senate district. And Senate District 28 takes Fairfield, which is part of the Gold Coast, and combines it with Newtown, which is a very different area. You know, it's in the middle of it lies in the middle of the Housatonic River. So these are just a few examples of COI splits in the current maps. And this committee and the subsequent 9-person commission can correct this and draw congressional and state legislature maps that preserve Connecticut COIs. And I have submitted a congressional and state Senate map into the public record along with my testimony. I will note that my state Senate map does put Wilton with other small towns and separates it from Norwalk. So if nothing else, it has that going for it. Both maps largely keep major Connecticut COIs together in either one district or a set of districts, depending on the map. I hope that you and the commission use this data as a guide when making your final deliberations. Thank you for your time, and I am willing to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony and for submitting some maps. I will take that as an opportunity just to share with all members of the public that there are some third-party redistricting websites out there that offer the census data and some very powerful mapping tools to allow you to draw your own district plan and submit it to the redistricting committee or the subsequent commission. And that kind of input is really welcome by this committee. And so we would encourage you to do that. Representative Exum, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Representative Haddad. I would just like to say hello to Ryan. I don't know if Ryan lives in my district or not, but I do represent a part of Avon. Oh, I do. Well, wonderful. That's even better. But I also want to thank you for submitting maps as well. And I look forward to seeing that part of your testimony. I find that particularly interesting as well. So thank you so much. And also, although you inadvertently, until you sat through, heard about what's taking place, what the comments on Wilton, I think that you will have made a lot of people who are listening in probably very happy. But thank you so much for speaking out tonight.
Thank you, Representative Exum.
Thank you very much. And so seeing no other hands raised, we'll move on. Thank you very much for your testimony. I would like to say one thing, which is I've noticed that there's only one more person waiting as a possible attendee in the attendee waiting room. Unfortunately, it's a little bit confusing because I noticed the number of Gail Lavielles here are multiplying. There are two. Not that that's an important thing, Gail, but it's just trying to figure out how to work this through. But I would ask that the one person who's still waiting as an attendee in the waiting room should perhaps log out and then log back in. Be sure to use your name, and that might enable us to get you back into the web room. And at some point, we will figure out who the real Gail Lavielle is, and we'll ask her to stand up. How about that? I know it is. The next person on the list, however, is Joshua Cole.
Good evening, Representative Haddad and distinguished members of the Reapportionment Committee. My name is Joshua Cole. My wife and I have been residents of the town of Wilton since July 2007 and have two daughters ages 6 and 9. I currently have the privilege of serving the town of Wilton as an elected member of the Board of Selectmen and have also served the town for several years as an elected member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, including 2 years as chairman. As you know, the Connecticut House of Representatives has 151 members, and each member district represents approximately 22,600 residents. Wilton, which is a town of roughly 18,500 residents, is the largest municipality in the state without a resident state representative or state senator. Wilton is also the largest municipality in the state, which is split into multiple districts, none of which constitute 50% or more of the district. The 143rd House District, which includes the majority of Wilton, is split between Wilton and Norwalk, with each municipality comprising approximately 45% of the district and the remaining 10% of the district located in Westport. The interests of a city like Norwalk and a rural small town like Wilton are widely divergent. Their interests are not the same and their perspectives are very different. A single elected state representative who only has one vote in the House cannot, regardless of political party, and despite their good efforts, faithfully and effectively represent three very different communities. There are certainly situations where a representative for this district will have the unenviable task of supporting a policy or piece of legislation which benefits one of the communities in the district at the disadvantage or detriment of one of the other communities in the district. With the current configuration of this district and the divergent interests of the communities that make up the district, Wilton is deprived of having a state representative regardless of party whose primary focus is Wilton and who can dedicate their time to make Wilton their top priority. It is for these reasons that I respectfully ask for you to redraw the 143rd district to separate Wilton and Norwalk and include Wilton in a district with another small rural town that shares similar issues and challenges. I thank all of you for your time and service on this committee and hope that you will agree that Wilton deserves its own dedicated representative who will be able to make Wilton their top priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole, for your testimony. I do not see any hands raised by members of the committee, and so I'll thank you for your testimony. I'm going to pause for just a second and just try to figure out how to identify the misidentified Gail Lavielle on the list. If you could just unmute yourself and tell me what your name is, I'll figure out how to call you at the appropriate time.
Yes, hi, it's Annalisa Stravato.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll find you on the list and I'll call you at the appropriate moment. But the next person on the list is Michael Komoronek. I probably hacked that name so badly he doesn't know what he was called. Komoronek. Michael, are you here? Can you? You're in the room. I see you. You're muted, and you're not. There we go.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I'm just an interested observer. I really have nothing to say to the committee whatsoever. I'm just watching. So you can move right on ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. You can watch us on CTN as well if you'd like. You don't have to be through this mechanism. But thank you very much. The next person on the list is Elsa Obuchowski.
Hello. I'm actually Deborah Diorenzo, but I will be reading Elsa's testimony this evening since she had a conflict. Elsa and I are both Norwalk, Connecticut residents. Her testimony includes, I would like to make a specific case for Norwalk State House Districts 140 and 141. The 140th is heavily Democratic and the 140th first is heavily Republican, so much so that the Democratic and Republican incumbents in these districts have often run unopposed. These two districts are adjacent to each other. Geographically, it should not be difficult to shift some voters between the two to make them both more competitive. Understand there is an argument in favor of communities of interest, but in this case, that argument weighs towards safe blue and red districts to the point of what I considered hacking. When we have a candidate from one party running unopposed or with a very weak challenger, as the state reps for both the 140th and 141st have done time after time, the constituents voters, this constitutes voter suppression. People figure they know who's going to win, so they don't bother voting. As a result, no votes are cast for all the other candidates on the ballot, from President of the United States to US Senate to US House to Governor to State Senate. District lines should not be about incumbent protection. They should give voters a choice. I ask that the Reappointment Committee please reconfigure the 140th and 141st State House districts to make them more competitive. Thank you so much for your consideration and time.
Thank you very much for your testimony and for that of the League of Women Voters. We appreciate your.
Yeah, I was going to say also, Elsa, I think, has submitted her testimony as well as an email.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I don't see any questions, and so we will move on to the next person on the list. And unfortunately, he has his hand up, and so I know he's here and ready. Ralph Oben.
Thank you, Representative Haddad, and to the committee for reallocation and conducting this virtual meeting. My name is Rolf Oben. I'm a resident of Darien, Connecticut. have been for the last 23 years. I'm also a member of the Darien RTM District 4. And I'm speaking tonight with regard specifically to the Senate districts of 25th and 27th. 200 years ago, a little more than 200 years ago, Darien was established as a township separate from Stamford. It took Thaddeus Bell lobbying the Hartford legislature for 16 years before he was able to finally get Darien recognized as a separate township from Stamford. Today, the 2020 census shows Darien with a population of 21,499 people, an increase of 3.7% from the previous census of 2010, a small town in comparison to its Norwalk neighbor of 91,000 and Stamford population of 135,000. Both of these neighboring towns have realized greater population increases also since the previous census was taken. Darien's population density is far less than that of Norwalk or Stamford. Today, Darien suffers from fractured voting brought on by the 25th and 27th Connecticut State Senate districts. These districts divide Darien, causing voter dilution and underrepresentation. Voterrecords.com lists Darien as having voter record representation of 24% Democrat, 37% Republican, 37.7% unaffiliated, and 1.1% of others. Darien election results are to a significant degree contingent on unaffiliated voters and the quality of the candidate, not necessarily party affiliation. I submit that the 25th and 27th districts, as presently defined, do not serve Darien. They are weighted too heavily to the voters of Norwalk and Stamford, particularly with the 2020 census results that show significant population growth in these cities. Darien has more common interests with towns such as New Canaan, Wilton, or Ridgefield than the cities of Norwalk and Stamford. Darien and New Canaan's underage populations are similar in their need for education, care, and protection. They share a common interest in land preservation, property rights, and zoning regulations. 2 water courses run from New Canaan to Darien and drain to Long Island Sound. So we have a common interest, not only just in terms of politics or representation, but also in terms of the overall welfare, particularly with regards to drainage and stormwater runoff that affects Darien in particular.
3 minutes, sir. 3 minutes.
Okay. In other words, Darien and New Haven have more common interests to each other than Norwalk or Stamford. Darien needs 1 state senator, giving it the voting autonomy it deserves. Please consider Darien to a single state Senate district with communities of similar interest. Thank you for your attention and your listening.
Thank you very much for your testimony and for your patience tonight. We appreciate that you patiently waited to deliver your testimony. We appreciate that. I don't see any questions from members of the committee, and so I'll call on the next person, who is Jennifer Dayton.
Good evening, distinguished members. Thank you very much for your work on the committee. I live on the borderline of Greenwich and Stamford. As you know, Stamford has seen the largest population growth, as has my congressional district. My interest tonight is in speaking on the issue of transparency for Connecticut citizens. I am Vice President of Advocacy for LWV Greenwich, one of the largest local leagues of women voters in the state. I've submitted written testimony, so I will be very brief. Since your committee was unable to present draft maps in advance of public hearings, I ask that the commission which succeeds you present draft maps for a Zoom hearing and provide a robust website for public information. Only when we can examine the plan can we truly weigh in with our views and provide relevant and timely feedback. Thank you for your consideration. Have a great night.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it. All of the The testimony that we collect here at our 4 public hearings, of course, will become part of the public record that the subsequent commission will inherit and I'm sure consider very carefully. So we appreciate your testimony. If I don't see any questions from members of the committee, and so I will move on. And the next speaker is Nina Giro.
Thank you very much for your time and attention tonight, and I will follow up with written testimony. My name is Nina Giroux. I've been a Connecticut resident since 1988, currently reside in Manchester, and I represent the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford. I want to start by outlining the League's position on redistricting, and it's a position that I fully support personally. The League believes that the best way to conduct redistricting is through independent, nonpartisan special commissions made up of groups and individuals that are representative of the relevant communities. Although the Connecticut process for redistricting is embedded in the state constitution and therefore not easily changed, transparency into the process could be vastly improved. And like Ms. Dayton just said, we believe that promotion of a user-friendly website inclusive of plain language summaries and other resources would be pivotal for that transparency. The public should not have to decipher the technical language of state statutes to tease out exactly how this process works. It is notable that the group Represent Us assesses the threat of partisan gerrymandering in Connecticut as high, largely because of the absence of robust transparency measures. The Constitution is silent on transparency and public input. Therefore, the threat could be mitigated by legislative action to wrap transparency and public input provisions around the current constitutional provisions for the redistricting process. Finally, the League believes that the public should know what considerations, in addition to federal requirements, have been used to create districts. And this includes the factors used to decide which districts will be above or below the ideal population average. On a personal note, I see the upcoming task of redistricting as an opportunity for our lawmakers to engage the voting public and build trust in our state and local government, which is arguably a top priority to preserve our democracy. Taking the time to promote the Reapportionment Committee's work to seek and place value on public input and to educate and inform the public of the committee's considerations and decisions could go a long way to demonstrate that Connecticut's lawmakers care about fairness and service to the full spectrum of community needs. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, and we appreciate your perspective. I don't see any hands raised, and so we'll thank you for your testimony. The next person on the list is Gail Lavielle. Will the real Gail Lavielle please stand up?
Thank you very much, Representative. I assure you that Annalisa Stravato is a good friend and she wasn't trying to impersonate me. At least I don't think so. It's good to see you.
I could never do that. Big shoes to fill.
Anyway, it's good to see you all. For the record, my name is Gail Lavielle. I have lived in Wilton since 2002 with a 2.5-year interruption. And I had the honor of representing the 143rd House District for a decade, from January 2011 until January 2021, when I chose not to seek a 6th term. You have, I'm sure by now, digested what people from Wilton have to say, so I won't go through all the details. But I did want to bring you my perspective as having been the person who had to do this for 8 years under the configuration where we currently find the 143rd District. You've heard people say Wilton needs a dedicated representative. Well, everybody's dedicated, we know that. It's not that, when you do a job in the legislature, The job you do is dictated by the composition of your district. And usually there is some town that kind of takes precedence, whether you live in it or not. That is not the case with the 143rd district and hasn't been since 2012. So we don't have someone who is able to dedicate that focus, that time to Wilton because of the configuration of the district. It's not about who it is. It's not about their party. And I am the attestation to the fact that it's not about where they live. I live in Wilton, you can tell that. But for 8 years, I represented a district where Norwalk constituted as much of it as Wilton did. So it was schizophrenic. When I would take controversial votes, I figured one or the other of them would throw me out if I did the thing they didn't like, because there were so many votes where Norwalk and Wilton didn't have the same interests. When I first came in, somebody told you this already, it was 60% Wilton and 40% Norwalk. That was very hard. But it wasn't as hard as it was when it became equal Wilton and Norwalk. And again, Westport was a small sliver. We're aware that if you were to today separate Wilton from Norwalk and combine it with, let's pretend, Ridgefield, well, we might have a district that was 85% Wilton and 15% Ridgefield. We're aware that we could one day have a representative from Ridgefield, even if it's only 15%. But at least that town has interests very similar to Wilton's. Similarly, Ridgefield could get probably a representative from Wilton, but again, they are similar interests. But that isn't the case today with this district, which actually reached the height of absurdity for me. It was anybody with a decent conscience who is absolutely intent on representing their constituents well is tormented by this situation. And asking one person to do it just doesn't work. Not just for that person, but for Wilton and for Norwalk. Regardless of your party, regardless of your good faith efforts, you can't do it. Not really properly. And that was my experience. It was very tough. It was very stressful. You do what you can. But at the end of the day, Wilton has 2 representatives. You would hope that one of them was really Wilton was clearly the priority according to its preponderance in the district. Norwalk's got 4 other state representatives besides this one. So again, you know what the ask is. And I do think it makes sense. It's not political. I know these exercises often are, but this really is not practical the way that it's set up. So I do, as have other neighbors of mine,
3 minutes.
we asked you to separate Wilton and Norwalk and put Wilton in a district with another small town with similar issues. Thank you to all of you for serving on the committee, and I hope that I may trust that you will give Wilton's situation the attention that its residents deserve. My written testimony is submitted, and thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Representative Lavielle. It's very good to see you once again, and thank you for your comments this evening. Are there any other comments from the committee? Questions? Senator Formica.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the good representative for her insight. We have heard a lot about Wilton tonight, but I think you bring a perspective that will help us, I think, bring clarity to really what the difficulties were to represent both communities. So thank you for that. I enjoyed our time in the legislature together and working with you on appropriations, and I hope that you and your family remain well in your retirement from state service.
Thank you very much, Senator. The same to you, and I very much appreciated our time ranking on appropriations.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments or raised hands, We'll move to the next person on the list, who is Matthew Raimondi.
Hello, everyone. Following up after Representative Lavalle is it's kind of like following up after a rock star, but I will give it my best. First off, hello to everyone on the committee, and sincerely thank you very much for your time and for giving the public this opportunity. My name is Matt Raimondi. I'm a resident of Wilton and actually grew up here. I attended Wilton Public Schools, moved away for a little bit, moved to Philly, Boston, New York, but my wife and I moved back here about 18 months ago. And while we greatly enjoyed living in all the different cities, we were drawn to Wilton. It's a small town environment, has a strong sense of community. And for me, it was coming back home. After we moved back here, I was surprised to learn that our 143rd district, it's joined with Norwalk, and that Wilton is the only town in the state without its own dedicated representative. Since the population of our district is equally split between residents of Norwalk and Wilton, there's a large burden placed on our representative to represent the interests of both areas, which have vastly different environments. In short, as has been said many times before, Norwalk is a city and Wilton is a small town. But this difference is fundamental, and it leads to different sets of challenges and demands which are being placed on the shoulders of one representative. The representative of the 143rd district is essentially pulled in two different directions. One which is drawn by the needs of a city, and the other which is drawn by the needs of a small town. Today, Wilton is the largest town in Connecticut that is split among multiple districts, and it's the only town that doesn't make up the majority of one district. Now is the right time to make this redistricting change. Per the census, and again, this has been a stat that's been thrown around, but it resonates, the population of Wilton has grown. We're at 18,500 people now, and it's the largest municipality without a resident senator or state representative. And given that the average district has about 22,500 residents, the municipality of Wilton is large enough to have its own dedicated representative whose priority is Wilton. And again, as Representative Lavalle said, that representative may not be from Wilton, but at least the town will be similar and will have similar interests to us. So given all of that, I am a proponent of Wilton receiving its own dedicated representative in the upcoming redistricting. And having our own representative who could focus on the needs of Wilton and its people would provide the residents of Wilton and other similar towns of a more representative voice in Hartford. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments of the committee members? Seeing no hands, thank you, Mr. Raimondi. And our next person is William Kirschner.
Hi, thank you, Representative Haddad and other members of the Reapportionment Committee. I am a Republican, and I like my Democratic Representative, Catherine Abercrombie of the 83rd, but our gerrymandered crescent of a district and others throughout the state are one of my 5 top issues facing the people of the state of Connecticut. I applaud the efforts of Mr. Erlinghauser from Ansonia, who I never met, in providing your committee a template for eliminating politics from redistricting in a previous Reapportionment Committee hearing. I don't favor reapportionment, which strikes a balance between Democrats and Republicans, but instead clusters neighbors in geographic proximity using town borders to the greatest extent possible. If this allows the possibility of giving voice to political parties not represented currently, such as the Libertarians and the Working Families Party, it will benefit us all. And I apologize for getting my PDF of this testimony emailed to you only this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Kirschner. And the next individual on the list is Annalise Stravato.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address this committee. My name is Annalisa Stravato, and I am the current state central representative of the 26th Senatorial District. I am also the Wilton Registrar of Voters and the Vice President of the Registrar of Voters Association. My husband, our children, and I moved to Wilton after an exhausting search in the year 2000. After living in New York, we were ready to settle in a small town that would afford us the opportunity to have more input and involvement in how our community functions and is run. Wilton was that town. This Wiltonian believes that the needs of a small town like Wilton, when compared with that of a large city like Norwalk, are complete diametric opposites. Large cities boast a lively nightlife, fun restaurants and bars. They demand their representatives focus their attention on shopping centers, public sewers, while small towns offer quiet backyards and fire pits and bike trails. They require their representatives to focus their attention on what is best for local mom and pop shops and monies for snow plowing. With Wilton's population just over 18,000, it should be combined with a town that shares many similarities and characteristics that would provide a state's representative who represents both towns with an opportunity to concentrate on the issues of importance to towns of its sizes. I believe Wilton cannot be served by someone who must address both extremes. It is for these reasons I ask there be great consideration given in combining Wilton with a smaller, similar town. Wiltonians and their small town way of life should be afforded more than just the mathematical formula. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Annalisa. And the next individual on the list is Jason Lubell.
Thank you very much, members of the Reapportionment Committee, for holding this tonight and listening to all this testimony, including mine. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little repetitive with some of the other people, but I'm from Wilton, so some of this will sound similar. So yeah, my name is Jason Lubell. I go by Jake. I've been a resident of Wilton for just over 2 years now. I live here with my wife and my 3 young children who are 6, 5, and 2 years old. We've lived in Connecticut for 7 years. Previously, we lived in Stamford and Darien. And we ultimately decided to settle in Wilton, for a lot of the reasons the other people, the small town feel, and really the high level of civic and community involvement. I've gotten involved, in voting and on the Economic Development Commission in town here. And I've realized that in the 143rd district where I live, we have roughly the same number of Wilton and Norwalk residents. And then we even have a sliver of Westport, all towns of different sizes that have very different needs and very different desires. Very difficult, as you know, for one representative to represent, those towns very well, just given the differing interests. Today, Wilton is the largest town that is split among multiple districts. People have covered this tonight. We also are the largest town without a state resident, that is a state house member or a state senator. And I know that we're only, Wilton's population now is over 18,500 residents. The average house seat now has about 23,000 residents. So we're actually very close to being large enough to be our own district. And it would, I believe it would make a lot of sense for us to, have a majority Wilton district. I'm asking this committee to allow Wilton this district. We would very much like to have a representative with our best interest at heart, someone who will fight for us and make us his or her first priority. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Jason. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll go to the next person on the list, who is Aaron Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Aaron Good. I'm with the League of Women Voters of New Haven and the founder of the New Haven Votes Coalition. First, I want to associate myself with what my League of Women Voters colleagues said about nonpartisan redistricting, about the need for transparency, and particularly about making draft maps available to the public. So if I have a few comments pertaining to New Haven and not Wilton. I hope that's okay. New Haven currently has 3 multi-town state rep districts, which is a historical anomaly. One of those, the 94th, makes sense in terms of contiguity of a community of interest. The other 2 are very problematic in that they're so heavily weighted towards one municipality over the other. The 96th is 80% heavily urbanized parts of New Haven with a small amount of exurban, even semi-rural areas in the northern part of East Haven, which has a negative impact on quality of representation for East Haven. And the 116th district makes no sense at all, does not serve the interests of New Haven because it's 97% in West Haven and 3% in the Hill neighborhood of New Haven, which is not part of any cognizable shared community of interest with West Haven. I have great respect for the current occupant of that seat, the 116th, but even the best state rep in the world will have difficulty representing complex needs of constituents from a town that is less than 3% of their district. Prior to 2011, New Haven had only one multi-town state rep district. I think it would serve New Haven's interests and those of surrounding communities to return to that more logical configuration. We have a recurring problem in New Haven with some voters' polling places shifting between even and odd number years, which is a problem that mainly has to be addressed in our local redistricting process, but it would help if we did not have the 92nd, 93rd, 94th, and 96th districts radiating out axially from downtown, so that if I walk 4 blocks from the intersection of Dwight and Chapel to York and Elm, I cross through 4 House districts. Downtown New Haven has traditionally not been considered a community of interest because it had a low residential population, pretty much as Yale undergraduates, but that is no longer the case. Downtown now has many unique problems that require strong representation, and I would urge a map that does not crack downtown apart into 3 or 4 districts, let alone crack the Yale campus into 3 districts, which causes a huge amount of unnecessary confusion. Finally, New Haven's 2 state Senate districts, the 10th and 11th, divide the city on a north-south axis, which wouldn't be a problem, but we also have 2 Board of Education districts that divide the city on an east-west axis. It would be much less confusing for our voters if the 2 state Senate districts and the 2 Board of Ed districts shared a more similar axial orientation. So thank you very much for your hard work, for ensuring a robust, transparent process and allowing people to submit maps on Dave's redistricting. That's certainly how I spend all of my free time. So thank you and good luck with your deliberations.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And thank you for identifying Dave's redistricting.org and redistrictor, no ER, just R at the end, .org as useful tools for individuals listening to draw their own maps. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will go back to the list. I see Thomas Pierce. Thomas?
No comment.
No comment?
True.
Okay.
Yes.
I do not see any other members that have signed up to testify in the room.
If I could just say, there's one person in the waiting room, the attendee room. I don't know if staff can get that.
Rep Haddad, I've been trying like crazy. Let me see if I can allow her to talk. Let me try that.
Yeah. Here she is.
Okay, maybe that worked.
Okay. Jane Allen, you're up.
I actually don't have anything to contribute at this point. I'm sorry. I just wanted to see how the process works.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? No. Staff, we have nobody else in the waiting room.
Nope, you have nobody else.
Okay. With that, I'd like to thank, staff for the outstanding job that they've done in putting together both the in-person public hearings as well as this virtual public hearing. I'd also like to thank my colleagues in both the House and Senate for joining us and working through this. I'd also like to thank the people who came out and took the time out of their busy days to share their insight and input. I know I learned a lot from not only different sections of Connecticut, but different ways to look at this. I also thank people who are making the time and designing maps and making written commentary and giving it to us in that fashion. So all of the above that I've just mentioned, I truly appreciate their efforts. I'd also like to thank my co-chairman, Representative Greg Haddad, for doing an outstanding job and working together in a very collegial manner to make sure that we get this right. That's at the end of the day, what's important is to make sure that this is a fair and open process. To my co-chairman, I do thank you for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to anybody else who would like to make closing comments.
I will just jump in quickly and also thank you, Senator Kelly, for your leadership on this committee. It's been a pleasure to work with you through this process. And like you, I really want to commend the staff for doing a great job at helping to organize these public hearings. And folks who have testified and people who may still want to provide information to the committee or the subsequent commission. Valuable information that the commission can use to help draw maps. I'll remind people again, just as Senator Kelly did, that you can go to Dave's Redistricting or districtor.org and draw maps. You can submit written testimony to the committee and the commission through the website. And I know that everybody who, all my colleagues who serve on this committee, Representative Exum, Senator Formica, Senator Abrams, Senator Kelly, Senator McCrory, Representative Candelora, and Representative Perillo. I know all of us are committed to doing the right thing and drawing maps that are both fair and serve the people of Connecticut well. So I look forward to the continuation of this process. This committee is constitutionally dissolved tomorrow at midnight, but the commission will, I think, very quickly be reformed. They will have some work to do right away, adding a 9th member, and then proceeding with the hard work of drawing maps. And I know that all 4 caucuses are committed to doing that in as open and in transparent way as possible. And so I look forward to seeing that process unfold. And with that, Senator Kelly, I'll pass it back to you to see if there's anybody else who wants to offer some closing remarks.
Floor is open for anyone who'd like to remark further.
This is Tom Pearson. Yes, I do have a comment. With this very complex job ahead of you, I would encourage you to look ahead to the next census, the 2030 census, and what we might do there, so that I would hope that this would be a groundwork toward further making the work independent and transparent, building on the work that you'll be doing here over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Any further comments? Okay, with that, we'll adjourn. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.